Hello, today I have the opportunity to do a comparison between an Epiphone Dot EB and my Gibson ES-335 Dot, both 2001. So the reason I have this Epiphone here is that I have a friend that owns this guitar and he has some tuning instability issues, he says. And I offered to have a look at it. That's a great opportunity, of course, to compare to my Gibson. They are both 2001, and so they should be very similar in how they are made. And I have had some help from my friend ChatGPT. I have access to the 01 preview version, the latest right now. That is supposedly better at reasoning, and I can see that when it thinks, it spends a longer time than the regular ChatGPT, also the 4.0 version, and it's quite impressive how it analyzes, and you can see how it walks through the steps before it presents to you the finds. It's also known to hallucinate. Cross-checking, and from what I know from beforehand, also it seems very likely that what I have here now is correct information, because I asked for the sources of ChatGPT, and it says also that it uses Gibson and Epiphone websites, it uses product catalogs, also browses through guitar communities, reads articles. I think it's a good combination of sources that it uses. All right, without further ado, I will just let you know also that I will of course play these guitars. So if you're not keen on listening to me talk about the differences and similarities, skip ahead and you'll get to listen to the tones from the guitars. Of course, I will obviously compare that. I asked it about the serial number, if it could analyze the serial number on this guitar, and it has a serial number with just numbers and no letters in front. It also has this sticker behind here that says 100% inspected and set up in the USA by Epiphone, and has a number 13. That might be the number of the guy that has inspected it. And as this just has number in the serial, no letters in front of it, it's a bit hard to know which factory it comes out of, because it's a Korean made. The serial number indicates that it is a 2001, and we have 3 factories in Korea that I know of and that Chat mentions, and that is the Unsung factory, the Samick, and the Peerless. They all used to have the front letter of the name of the factory in front of the serial number, but at some periods in time they didn't do it. To cut it short, most likely it's coming from the Samick factory. That is also where my Epiphone Les Paul, if you have watched my video on that, where that is made, that is a great guitar. We can look at the similarities. It has a maple top, side and back, and it is a laminate, and that is similar to my Gibson, which also has laminated maple body and also a maple center block. That is similar for both of these guitars. Chat claims that Gibson pays more attention to detail when it picks the wood and the materials for the guitar. This is more of a mass-produced guitar, and yeah, I would think that it is like that. It is more nicer wood samples in the Gibsons than this mass-produced, but we can't be sure, of course. It is cheaper, so there is a reason for that. So the neck is mahogany and with a rosewood fingerboard, same for the Gibson, and yeah, that's more or less the similarities for these guitars. If we look at the differences, we can, I have this note, so I just have to be sure that I'm not telling you any nonsense here. Yeah, we could look at the pickups. In the Epiphone, they are probably PAF replicas or made to replicate the vintage sound, but it has Alnico 5 magnets, which will give it a bit more clarity. It has a poly coated wire and standard components. So if we have a look at the Gibson has Classic 57s, which is a recreation of the PAFs from to get the vintage tones. But this has now Alnico 2 magnets, which are supposedly warmer and softer in tone. It has enamel coated wire and nickel plated base plates. Let's have a look at what I have adjusted on the Epiphone. So I started with filing the nut. So the slots in the nut were a bit uneven, the height adjustment. And there was also general too high. So that will give you that you could almost press down one tone difference because of the height from in the first fret. So that also explains why some cheaper guitars might be troublesome for beginners to play when they come to the F chord, learning the barred F chord. It's always something to maybe struggle with or even give up guitar playing in all because it's too hard to fix it. And that might be down to that badly adjusted nut that gives you a hard time to play the F chord or the things when you play down here. You also open chords will sound out of tune because when you press down here, that will make it out of tune. So it's quite vital to adjust the nut so that when you press down the strings in the first fret, that they don't bring the guitar out of tune immediately. That will be less noticeable the further up you come, because then it will get more closer to the frets. So that's adjusted. I have adjusted the height of the strings. It was a bit high adjusted here, so the action was high when you got up here. So I have adjusted that. I did restring it, also to have it similar strings on both guitars. The Gibson has recently got new strings, so I gave this one a set of similar strings. And when I did restring it, I noticed that the strings were put on with very few windings here, almost not one whole round on some of them. So I changed it to how I like to string my guitars. So what I do is I put the first wind above the string that comes through the hole in the peg, and then the rest of them will go under the rest, so the strings will lock in place like that, and it's almost like a locking tuner then. So hopefully that will give it more tuning stability. I don't know, because I also noticed that these tuners, when I turn them, I can hear the metal scraping a bit in some of them. So might be down to also the quality of the tuners are not top. If they work, they work. So it's not necessary to change them if they keep tuning stability now and are stable. But it might be over time worth to look into if that is an upgrade to make, to change them into higher quality tuners. I did flip this bridge. It has these intonation screws, and they were on that side. So all of my guitars have the intonation screws on that side of the bridge, but this guitar had it flipped, so they were here. So I've always wondered about that, what the reason is for the intonation screws being on this side, because it's a bit hard to get to and much easier if they are on that side. But with the break angle here from the bridge and down to the stop tail, that led to, when the intonation screws were on this side, the screw heads were touching the strings here. So I flipped it, and they run free now, and it's, of course, this is the way it's supposed to be. So that's fixed. And I also gave it some fretboard juice. It was probably quite dry, the fretboard. And yeah, think that's it. Let's see what I put down on my note here. Yeah, I gave it some graffiti to help the friction. Just from a pencil. It's works fine with that. It will be a bit dirty if you have a white knot and add black graffiti from pencil. It will of course be a bit dirty. I don't mind that. If you have a look at my Gibson, I think it also has that treatment, but it's not very noticeable, and maybe it looks a bit more relict or old. Fine. There's one more thing that is a difference, and that is I noticed that this guitar doesn't have a fret binding. So if we have a look at my Gibson, it has this fret binding here. As this guitar hasn't had a fret replacement, the nibs on the binding is still covering the fret ends. That is a sign of a guitar that hasn't had a fret replacement. It isn't always the case that if they are gone, that the guitar has had a fret replacement, because some guitars doesn't come with fret nibs initially. So just be aware of that. It's not always a sign of a fret replacement. Anyways, I asked my friend Chat if this Epiphone not having a fret binding, if this really was a cheaper studio model. But it says no, this is the way they were made. They were made without a fret binding, and it's no way a downgraded guitar. It is just the way it was made. So yeah, my Gibson has a nitro lacquer, and the Epiphone, yes, it has a poly lacquer. And it's noticeable, especially here around where the neck meets the body. It's called a set neck when the neck is fitted into a groove here and glued. But you can see it here clearly, and it's much harder to view on this Epiphone. I can't really see where the neck meets the body, and that is due to that poly finish is so much thicker that it will cover up that what shows here on the Gibson. Well, of course, this also sports color difference in the neck and the body, so that makes it more visible, of course. I can see no upgrades done to the Epiphone. It looks all original, but my Gibson here, I won't call it upgrades, but I've modified it. I've changed the knobs to these called reflector knobs. It originally had black top hats. I wanted to look more vintage, so it's just for the aesthetics. So yeah, I changed to that, and also I changed to these Cluson style tuners. It originally had a set of chrome Grover tuners. They worked perfectly fine, and I still have them, of course, but I think it looks much better with these Cluson style tuners. And they are also Gibson brand, of course, so it's good quality, but it looks so much better. I also have matted down the lacquer of the finish on this body. I can't remember why I did that, but it's probably because I don't like so much too shiny guitars. I like it when it's a bit more relict. Yeah, I'm on and off with these glasses because I can't read anything without them, but I can see you fine without them. So I bring in this microphone to get a better sound from the acoustics. First out, the Epiphone. Sounds good? How's the Gibson? Yeah, Gibson seemed a bit brighter in tone to me. I can also feel a bit of difference in the neck, not much, but I think this is a bit wider up here, and I can feel the poly finish on the back on this. It's a bit more sticky. Right. Yeah, it's a quite noticeable difference acoustically. But they are both good in their own way. It's good acoustically resonating, sustaining for a long time both. Let's plug them in and see how that goes. sorry if I was a bit inconsistent with how I used the switch on the guitars. The way that I recorded it was just kind of random. I just played through it all, and I've cut parts along the timeline now to fit some of this guitar and some of the Gibson. So it might be a bit inconsistent with if I used even an overdrive in some parts, and if I used a neck pickup or bridge pickup or in between. Sorry about that, but I hope the overall will give you an impression of how the two guitars sound. I have to say I'm quite impressed with this Korean-made Epiphone. Seems to be a trend in this house, at least, that all these Korean Epiphones that I've tried, they are so good. And this is no exception. It is really a good guitar, and you can feel that there's a good craftsmanship put into this when it was made. These now hold tuning. The pickups are fine, but to me, or to my preference, they lack a bit of that final touch, or the articulation, harmonics. There is something to improve in that department, for me at least. If you are not that picky, these pickups will do very well. So I noted down some things and just see that, yeah, the difference in attention to details from the Gibson to this one, it's noticeable. The fret binding is one thing, the nitro lacquer, it's noticeable when I play. I can feel the neck is more sticky. It's noticeable. And I have my Gibson here. There is a bit of difference playing them, and you clearly heard a difference in tone. So I was a bit surprised to learn that the Gibson feels brighter. And although it has Alnico 2 magnets, and this has Alnico 5, which should be brighter, that might say something also of the construction of the guitar, that this guitar needs a brighter pickup. Maybe because of the poly finish, maybe because of the quality of the materials used. Both these guitars are good. I think you would be happy with either of them. This guitar has potential to get even better with just a few modifications, upgrades if you like. This guitar is already very good. And yeah, it's been with me for, I don't know, 2 decades. I hope that my friend will like this guitar even better now, after I managed to adjust the nut grooves, and also fixing the action so it plays more smoother, more easy to play. It keeps tuning better. It's perfectly in tune after I just have played it and drag the strings. Open chords, sounds perfectly in tune to my ear. Good guitar. I hope this was useful for you to see the differences between the two, or similarities if you like. I have to say I have no idea about another Epiphone coming out from China. I guess they are these days, I'm not sure. There are different qualities of Epiphones now, of course there are these inspired by Gibson and stuff. But these late 90s or early 2000s Epiphones coming out of Korea, they are really good. I've tried quite a few of them now, and I can just say that there's something special with these guitars. Alright, that's it for me now. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.